Hello. In this video, we're going to do an introduction to the book of Mosiah, chapters 1 through 7, and this will give you some orientation to that. The last video I did was Enos through Omni. There's a great deal in the book of Omni that provides us with a context for the Mosiah 1 through 7. And the predominant feature of Mosiah 1 through 7 is the address given by King Benjamin. Understanding that, the question that I would like you to think about for a minute is why they're calling him King Benjamin. You remember back in Jacob chapter 1, when we were with the people of Nephi, they said that what they were going to do is call their kings second Nephi, third Nephi, and so on, because they liked Nephi so much. But now we've got a king called King Benjamin. So why is that? I wonder if you've ever thought of that. Well, I was thinking about that today, and it caused me to go back and do a little research to understand that when we're in Mosiah, we're now no longer talking about the people of Nephi. We've changed cultures or civilizations or whatever name you want to give to them, but we're no longer with the people of Nephi. I can tell you later in the Book of Mormon, these people will take on themselves the name of Nephi and the people of Nephi. But right now, in Mosiah 1 through 7, they are not the people of Nephi, and that's why they have a King Benjamin. So let me give you a little bit of the history and a little bit of the background so that you can understand what's happening here. So there are two people named Mosiah in the Book of Mormon. Mosiah number 1 is the father of King Benjamin. Mosiah number 2 is the son of King Benjamin. So Mosiah 1 is Mosiah 2's grandpa. We start with Mosiah 1. He was among the people of Nephi. And we learn from Malachi at the end of the book of Omni that Mosiah 1 was warned of God to leave the people of Nephi. And he did. That's reminiscent of Lehi leaving Jerusalem. It's reminiscent of Nephi leaving the people of Lehi to create the people of Nephi. This gets a little bit, hard to follow, but I'll try to simplify it here. So Mosiah 1 leaves the people of Nephi. He goes to a new land that is called the land of Zarahemla, and he finds the people of Zarahemla. The people of Mosiah join with the people of Zarahemla, and they create a new set of kings, the first king being Mosiah 1, the second king being King Benjamin. Now that's pretty simple, but it's actually pretty deep when we get into it. And so the way I would like to approach that with you is by introducing you to the word archetype, Archetype, archetype. Archetype is, it's like a pattern, but a person or a thing that is an archetype is the first member or exemplar of the pattern. And so we think of, for example, Moses as an archetype when he led the children of Israel out of Egypt. And things that follow that pattern or that archetype are known as archetypal. So we have Moses as a deliverer. We have the children of Israel who are in bondage in Egypt. They're miraculously taken away by the power of God, and they create a new nation. Well, what does that sound like to you? We've talked about it with Moses. That exists with Lehi. The whole story of Lehi follows the archetype of Moses. We have a people that is in danger of becoming or being taken into captivity, being warned by the Lord to leave. They leave and go to the promised land and create a new people. The same archetype pattern follows with Nephi. Nephi gets to the promised land. He's a member of the people of Lehi, but we have wicked and righteous. Nephi being on the righteous side, he is warned by God to leave. He leaves and creates the people of Nephi, and the remnant is known as the Lamanites. We have the very same thing now with Mosiah. He's with the people of Nephi, and he's commanded to leave, and he goes and founds this new nation together with the people of Zarahemla. So you can see the archetype and the archetypal pattern that's in that. There's an element of that pattern that figures in with great importance and is demonstrated quite clearly when we talk about the people of Mosiah and the people of Zarahemla. Let me go back and do a little history of the people of Zarahemla. So the person Zarahemla was a descendant of somebody named Mulek. Mulek was a son of Zedekiah. All right, now we've brought him right back to Jerusalem, because Zedekiah was king of Judah in Jerusalem. And you will recall that Lehi and his family left Jerusalem around the first year of the reign of Zedekiah. The reason that Lehi and the people of Lehi were warned by the Lord to leave is because of the impending captivity known as the Babylonian captivity. The Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar was getting ready to attack Jerusalem. The Lord knew that the people in Judah who were no longer righteous were going to be brought down into captivity, and he was trying to preserve the people of Lehi from that fate. Well, Lehi was not the only person, and the people of Lehi were not the only group, or was not the only group, that the Lord was trying to protect. In 2 Kings, in the Old Testament, we learn that all of the sons of Zedekiah were put to death by the Babylonians. However, Helaman in the Book of Mormon tells us that one of Zedekiah's sons, Mulek, was basically escaped and was led away from Jerusalem. We now know of two groups being led away from Jerusalem during the reign of Zedekiah to avoid the Babylonian captivity. Group number one is Lehi and the people of Lehi, and that account is in 1 Nephi in the Book of Mormon. The second group of people are the people of Mulek, son of Zedekiah, who ultimately became called the people of Zarahemla. There's a great big difference between the people of Zarahemla and the Nephites, and I'm reluctant to call them that at this point because we're a generation now removed. It's Mosiah who is being warned to leave the people of Nephi. So we're going to call them the people of Mosiah. So that's Mosiah 1. So let me make sure that I've got it straight for you. We start with the reign of Zedekiah in Jerusalem in the Old World. Lehi the prophet is warned to take his people and leave Jerusalem. He's group number one. Mulek, also in Jerusalem at the time, is warned to take his people and leave Jerusalem. So that's the two groups, Lehi and Mulek. They both leave Jerusalem at or about the same time, and they come to the Promised Land. We have the record maintained by Nephi. We have no record maintained by Mulek. And that's sort of a key here to this. After we learn about the history of the people of Nephi for a while, we have Mosiah leaving the people of Nephi and going into the wilderness. He meets up then with the people of Zarahemla, who were the followers of Mulek. If I can make it any more complex, I will, but that's the best I can do right now. I think you've got it. So in the one line, it's Lehi to Nephi and Mosiah. So Lehi, Nephi, Mosiah. And on the other side, it's Mulek, Zarahemla. So they're both starting in Jerusalem. They're both coming to the Promised Land. And Helaman tells us that Lehi and his people were led to the land southward, and Mulek and his people were led to the land northward. So they were not aware of each other at the time they landed. So now Mosiah, because of the unrighteousness of the people of Nephi, is led away into the wilderness. And he runs into the people of Zarahemla, who are already there, and they have their civilization. But something interesting has happened in the interim. Remember that they both came from the same place, so they started out with the language. But the language of the people of Zarahemla had become so corrupted that the people of Mosiah could not understand them, so they couldn't communicate with each other. Why was that? What was it that was different between the people of Mosiah, who had the language that had stayed pristine from the time of Jerusalem, and the people of Zarahemla, who had corrupted the language that they had while in Jerusalem? The difference was about the brass plates. You recall that Nephi, and there was a big episode that we studied, Nephi went back and got the brass plates at great expense and great effort, and we got that story in detail. So Lehi took the brass plates with him from Jerusalem to the Promised Land. When Nephi split from his brethren, and the people of Lehi were split into the people of Nephi and the Lamanites, it was the people of Nephi that kept the brass plates. When Mosiah left and separated himself from the people of Nephi, he took the brass plates. So he had the record, that side had the record all along, and Mosiah had it in his possession when he came to the people of Zarahemla. The people of Zarahemla, Mulek in particular, when he left Jerusalem, took no records with him. Therefore, they had no records to preserve their language, and they had no record of the prophecies or the teachings of the prophets to help them understand their place in the world and their relationship to God. So when Mosiah finds the people of Zarahemla, he can't communicate with them because their language has become corrupted. And Malachi also notes that the people at Zarahemla didn't believe in God. He said they denied the existence of their creator. So they had lost their religion, they had lost their religious understanding, and they had lost their language. And there they were, just wanderers in the wilderness. They had their society there, and we don't know at this point much what it was like, but we know that they were very happy to have encountered the people of Mosiah. So what happens next is Mosiah teaches the people of Zarahemla his language, gets some history, and that's how Helaman knows to tell us about some of the history of the people of Zarahemla, because they told it to Mosiah. The people of Mosiah and the people of Zarahemla unite, and they choose Mosiah to be their king. So now we are in a completely different kingdom, a completely different system, a completely different history from where we left off with the prophet Jacob. He was with the people of Nephi. We are now with the combined people of Mosiah / people of Zarahemla, with Mosiah having been their first king. And then when he passes, when Mosiah I passes, Benjamin, his son, becomes the king of this combined nation of the people of Mosiah and people of Zarahemla. So that's where we are, and that's where we pick up and where Mormon picks up. So I want to take you back to the words of Mormon. He says, let's see, he says, "And now concerning this King Benjamin, he had somewhat of contentions among his own people." That's Words of Mormon, verse 12. Verse 13, "And it came to pass also that the armies of the Lamanites came down out of the land of Nephi to battle against his people. But behold, King Benjamin gathered together his armies, and he did stand against them, and he did fight with the strength of his own arm, with the sword of Laban." So apparently Mosiah, when he separated from the people of Nephi, actually took more than just the brass plates. He also took the sword of Laban. Mormon continues in verse 14, "And in the strength of the Lord they did contend against their enemies, until they had slain many thousands of the Lamanites. And it came to pass that they did contend against the Lamanites, until they had driven them out of all the land of their inheritance. And it came to pass that after there had been false Christs, and their mouths had been shut, and they punished according to their crimes, and after there had been false prophets, and false preachers and teachers among the people, and all these having been punished according to their crimes, and after there having been much contention and many dissensions away unto the Lamanites, behold, it came to pass that King Benjamin, with the assistance of the holy prophets who were among his people, for behold, King Benjamin was a holy man, and he did reign over his people in righteousness, and there were many holy men in the land, and they did speak the word of God with power and with authority, and they did use much sharpness because of the stiff-neckedness of the people. Wherefore, with the help of these, King Benjamin, by laboring with all the might of his body and the faculty of his whole soul, and also the prophets, did once more establish peace in the land." So here's the archetype: a deliverer, a warning from God, impending captivity, obedient people being saved, taking scriptures with them. Then they start to become somewhat corrupted, or as Jacob would say, they begin to labor in sin. There are those who try to remain righteous, some who are sinful, and as the nation or the people ripens in iniquity, the righteous people then are subjected to contentions, wars, and if the unrighteous are getting the upper hand and there is a risk of captivity, then the righteous people are warned by God through a deliverer to separate themselves. Each time in this archetype, when they separate themselves, they go through a wilderness. They end up in a promised land, and if they have the scriptures, they preserve their language, they preserve their faith, and the pattern repeats. You are part of this archetype right now. And you recall when we go back to 1 Nephi 14, verse 7, where it's talking about us in our day, and it talks about the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. It puts us to a choice. 1 Nephi 14:7 says, "For the time cometh, saith the Lamb of God, that I will work a great and a marvelous work among the children of men, a work which shall be everlasting, either on the one hand or the other, either to the convincing them unto peace and life eternal, or unto the deliverance of them to the hardness of their hearts, and the blindness of their minds unto their being brought down into captivity, and also into destruction, both temporally and spiritually, according to the captivity of the devil of which I have spoken." So the archetype persists today, and we find ourselves in the midst of it. And King Benjamin found himself in the midst of it. And so let's look quickly at the first book of Mosiah to see what counsel he gave. And this underscores the second point of this orientation, which is the importance of having the scriptures. Mosiah 1, verse 2, referring to King Benjamin. "And it came to pass that he had 3 sons, and he called their names Mosiah, and Helaram, and Helaman. And he caused that they should be taught in all the language of his fathers, that thereby they might become men of understanding." Remember the very first verse of 1 Nephi? Sounds just the same. "I, Nephi, having been born of goodly parents, therefore I was taught somewhat in all the learning of my father." So Nephi is the son of Lehi. Lehi is teaching Nephi. Here we have King Benjamin teaching his sons Mosiah and Helaman and Heloram, so that they might be men of understanding, and that they might know concerning the prophecies which had been spoken by the mouths of their fathers, which were delivered them by the hand of the Lord. And he also taught them concerning the records which were engraven on the plates of brass, saying, "My sons, I would that ye should remember that were it not for these plates, which contain these records and these commandments, we must have suffered in ignorance, even at this present time, not knowing the mysteries of God. For it were not possible that our father Lehi could have remembered all these things, to have taught them to his children, except it were for the help of these plates. For he, having been taught in the language of the Egyptians, therefore he could read these engravings and teach them to his children, that thereby they could teach them to their children, and so fulfilling the commandments of God, even down to this present time." 2 takeaways from this orientation. You now know that we're talking about a different people. We've seen the archetypal Exodus compared to Moses, to Lehi, to Nephi, to Mosiah, compared that to Mulek and the people of Zarahemla, to see that the difference between those two nations was that one had scriptures with them, the other one did not, and that the one that did not have the scriptures with them lost their language and lost their faith. We are in that archetypal progression today. We have been given these very same records, and they present to us a choice. Our choice can be either peace and everlasting life, or it can be captivity according to the captivity of the devil. And so now that's the background that will form the basis for understanding in greater detail King Benjamin's address to his people in Zarahemla. And we'll continue with that on the next video. But I want to leave with you my testimony of the importance of the scriptures and the need to study them on a daily basis and follow them so that we